Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of Read Feck, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Momentous, written by Matthew41. On screens across the country, a woman politely but firmly elbowed a willowy man, dabbing an applicator at her face back behind a stage curtain, and took her place behind the podium. Endearingly plump, she would be naturally dark of complexion if she got more light from anywhere but a screen. And still pushing fingers through hair speckled with silver, she carefully adjusted a microphone before bothering with the blazer that she had hastily tossed on. The shirt beneath was still rumpled. Good evening. I'm sure most of you already know me. I'm Georgia Wayland, head of the North American office of the Joint Space Exploration Project. The microphone amplified her notes tapping before she finally looked up, blinking bloodshot eyes in the lights. The makeup technician hadn't managed to hide the bags under them. You'll have to excuse the lack of preparation, but we couldn't let this wait. Dave, come here. Ahmed. I don't need to see every nebula HR would have words about. No, in the background radiation. Come listen. David sighed, but wheeled his chair over, plucked the earphones from Ahmed's hand, and settled them in place. Milder than normal. Wind a cloud. Listen. Ahmed lifted his hand to glance between the cheap digital watch and Dave's face. When Dave cocked his head and squinted, Ahmed let a grin spread across his face. It's repeating perfectly 23.7 seconds. Clockwork. Send this over. We'll analyze it. Georgia glanced over to the left, out of frame. One of several people behind a laptop shook his head and mouthed a word, then nudged one next to him. That one nodded and grabbed a wireless mouse. Georgia didn't pretend to know the multimedia tech's job. They just did good work making the project, and her, as its spokesperson, look good. 23 years ago, we began to work on new scanners and propulsion. 18 years ago, we launched the Hermes to test the more advanced drives, take the most advanced readings yet of several of Jupiter and Saturn's moons. She had to stop under the applause from the front row. I can't take credit for that. It was under the leadership of James Mason before we lost him to retirement. Thanks, Mr. Mason. She lifted a black and green can from the podium and tossed towards the cameras as the screen behind her played footage of the purpose-designed vessel. Somehow, sleek and bulky at once, punching its way through and out of the atmosphere on a pillar of flame. The techs knew their craft. It dropped the landing craft on Angelia 1 on Lepidus, and then Angelia 2 on Titan, then used Saturn and the Neptune's gravity to slingshot itself out for its mission to take readings through the Oort cloud and accelerate, taking its new drives from theoretical to proven. Behind her, now familiar, played the telescope-aided footage of Hermes shedding the shell of its carriage pods and, with a flicker, boost atop a violet-white bloom. A dozen people had gathered behind several of the low cubicles, aside from the ones working at the computers. Some were spending their break there, some were working on tablets or scribbling in notebooks. One or two were simply staring. I've never seen this. Nothing like this. I know. Set it through everything. See what we can pull out of it. Audio, visual, radio, gamma, every spectrum. I mean, there's a pattern. There are multiple patterns, like a little bit of everything, and that repeat. The closest I've ever seen picked up was in a system, like a satellite runoff, and this split right here. David's mug paused at his lips, then slammed down on the desk at the same time as he stood quickly enough to knock his chair over. Save this, now! Where to? The computer, my computer, the server cloud, your email. Send it to your goddamn phone. Now! He spun and grabbed Ahmed by the collar, bending him across his desk almost by main force and pointing at the monitor. Those bands there, isolate those. Start rendering them any way you can. Go, go, go! He yelled across the office. Parker, get Georgia on the phone, now! Hermes has been more stable than any of us expected, and it kept sending back readings. A lot of little minutiae that, honestly, only scientific journals are really interested in. Let's face it, that stuff's nerd shit. Quiet laughter from the journalists, aside from the mostly good-natured scoffs from the academic reporters. And the drives have been functioning admirably, faster than anything man-made has propelled itself to date. The screen switched to the view from Hermes' camera, drifting past distant objects through a dust cloud. The scales of space are always humbling and apparently sluggish, particularly compared to the numbers now overlaid at the bottom of the screen. Miles and kilometers per hour, switching to seconds, and besides them a small but slowly climbing percentage of light speed. And then it broke out of the old cloud and went quiet. We'd expected that. It's space. It's kind of empty out there. She waved down another polite laugh from the front rows. Until, well, Ahmed shook his head. Dave, again, I can't print these. They're not just readings, not static, animated. Not the cameras. This, he gestured at the screen and the bright spots across it. A haze represented the Orc cloud surrounded by a bright dot, obviously intended to mock the sun and others further out. Don't mean the cameras. Here, Ahmed smacked the keyboard. The view expanded, and more blurs and dots appeared inward from the edges of the screen, and then sparkled into color. The solar system turned green. One star further along Hermes' path turned yellow, the other direction. Then a second, a third, flickered a red and screen didn't quite have the color for. The speakers crackled, playing sounds some of the analysts might recognize as the signature of particular stars as they lit up. And numbers began marking them, and suddenly the speakers were the only sound. Dave's mug fell from his hand. Georgia had to raise her voice above the press rabble. She couldn't help herself facing the camera for long, joining the reporters in staring at the screen behind her. She clutched her can like a lifeline at this point, aching eyes forgotten as stars lit up. Sol, green, now with subscript 3. A yellow star, 2. Red, 1, 4, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I just don't have a word for what history will record today. She had to take another drink. Her mouth had gone dry, and her grin was almost manic, as one star, another, a half-dozen distant suns twinkled on the screen, green rings flaring to life and pulsing around them. But someone does. The speakers that had been amplifying her microphone delivered the same single word in a dozen languages, oddly accented, delivered by an orator and tongued unaccustomed to any of them. Welcome. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.